Hey. So normally I don't do recordings that I post just because I don't like the sound of my voice sometimes, and sometimes I'm like, don't wear a lot of makeup. But anyway, that's not my point of this. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Pinktober. And I decided to wait till the end of the month. I was tempted to post some stuff on Facebook earlier. But I know a lot of people, make a big deal out of Pinktober, and there are breast cancer survivors that do celebrate it. But a lot of us don't. And I wanted to talk a little bit about why and some of my thoughts behind it. And writing it down would have taken forever. And also, people don't tend to read a lot nowadays. They'd rather see a video. And also, you lose a little bit of the nuances when you read. So a little bit of background for some of you guys that don't know me too well or met me after the fact. I ended up being diagnosed with breast cancer in October of 2014. So it actually happened to be Pinktober, the whole month of breast cancer awareness and all of that. And I was 41 years old. My first mammogram. I had skipped my 40-year-old mammogram, which was supposed to be my first, because we were in the process of moving to South Carolina and there was a lot of craziness and I forgot. So I ended up getting my mammogram when I was 41, and I got the dreaded call of, you need to come back. We need to do a more in-depth screening and all that kind of stuff. So I went back, got the diagnostic screening, so it was a little bit more in-depth. And I was told I had DCIS, which is ductal carcinoma in situ, which is like the lowest grade of breast cancer that you can have. So if you were to think of breast cancer from a 0 to a 4, 0 being the lowest grade, and then 4 being metastatic cancer, I was diagnosed with a 0. But because it was so spread out, the doctor said, hey, you need to have a mastectomy. So here we are, it's October of 2014, and I'm like, great. So I started looking at my health insurance, which is the first thing a lot of us do when we're diagnosed with something that serious. And I realized that I had I think it was like a $5,000 or $6,000 deductible before insurance kicks in. So I'm like, great, I have this huge deductible. And if I do surgery now, I also had a trip to Puerto Rico planned, a huge trip with meeting my brother. I hadn't seen him in like forever, since my wedding. So I was like, you know what? A couple of things. I spoke to my doctor. I'm like, look, can we hold off to the surgery till January? He was a little upset about it, the surgeon, but he's like, okay, we'll do it. But my two reasons were, and it's kind of sad, and this is why I say, well, I'll talk about it a little later, but when you're planning your medical procedures based on your deductible, that's kind of, effed up. But I figured if I'm going to have a surgery and I'm going to have to pay $5,000 out of pocket, I'd rather pay that $5,000 out of pocket once. So if I would have had my surgery in December, let's say, I would have had to pay my 2014 deductible. Then come January, I would have had to have my reconstruction surgery sometime in 2015, which is another $5,000 deductible. So I'm talking real numbers here. So I was like, well, that's 10 grand out of pocket. And that's not even counting then the next year chemo would roll into it. So then it's 15 grand out of pocket. And this is me with really good health insurance. So I'm not even talking about people that have like $10,000 deductibles. So again, postponed the surgery a little bit, got my surgery in February of that year. And in the process of the mastectomy, they actually found a huge lump that had not been found beforehand. So they also tested my lymph nodes, and they found a couple of cancer cells in the lymph nodes, which originally wasn't part of the plan. Now I have to go through chemo. So I went through the chemo process, which is hell. Don't let anybody fool you. It is hell. It was easier for me because the only health issue I had was cancer. I was extremely healthy. I was in a good weight. I was great. I was in perfect health for my age. And so we started chemo. There were some issues with my port and all this other. I'm not going to get into it. I'm going to make it an hour-long video. So anyway, so we went through that. And so I had to go through what they call ACT treatment, adriamycin, Cytoxan, and whatever. It makes your hair fall out, makes your eyebrows fall out. My eyebrows are still not back to their glorious pre-cancer days, and neither are my eyelashes. So I went through that. And again, you know, you're going through these treatments and you see these bills that come in, and I was shocked. Each chemotherapy treatment was $5,000, pretty much. And that's not counting the Herceptin that I had to go through later on, which was about $10,000 per treatment. So I made sure that I had my reconstructive surgery planned for the same year, because I was like, there's no way in hell I'm going to pay another $5,000. I've already maxed out my deductible. I had already maxed out my out-of-pocket max at that point, because once you max out your deductible, then you have to pay 20%, and then once you hit your out-of-pocket max, then insurance kicks in completely. So I was at that point. When I saw the bill of what my mastectomy cost, that was shocking. It was over $50,000. I didn't pay that, of course. But again, now you get to see what I'm talking about here. You know, in this country, we're so big on Pinktober and rah, 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 get your boobies checked. But, you know, what's that worth if we're not supporting people in that process? Because I say people because men get breast cancer too. And in general, people get cancer. So we're not talking just about breast cancer. So we're telling people to get checked, but we're not being supportive in the economic impact that breast cancer can have on somebody. I'm lucky. I have a well-paying job. I could afford the bills. But again, we don't support people in this process. So anyway, I think I digress a little bit about it. I have some notes over there. So if you see me glancing a little bit under the camera, that's what I'm looking at. So one of the other things I wanted to mention was, again, not providing the supports, as I was saying. I had to work through chemo. So every week or every couple of weeks, I went to the infusion center with my laptop. And until the Benadryl kicked in, I was working. So I worked as the infusion drip was kicking in when Benadryl kicked in, because they give you Benadryl as part of the infusion. And for any of you that have taken Benadryl, and you can imagine what an IV Benadryl does to you, you're out. Like, wake me up a couple hours later. But I had to work through all that. We could not afford for me to go on long-term disability, because long-term disability does not pay you your full salary. So again, I was fortunate that my chemo treatment did not kick my ass. Being that, again, that I was pretty healthy, being that I was going through a very common, I guess you can call it, common regimen. You know, I used to go through the typical get chemo, get my, I forgot the name of the shot. It's a shot to keep your white blood cells up. Get that shot. A couple of days later, feel like shit. And then my energy level would boost back up. So I was fully capable of working. Brain fog was kind of crappy as well, but I was capable of working. But again, you know, what about, I think of those people that can't, that the chemo kicks their asses and they don't have an opportunity, you know, long-term disability. Here, you go on long-term disability, your bills are still there, you still have to pay all of that. It's not going to go away. Long-term disability, a lot of companies only pay you 60% of your salary or 70%. You know, your home, you may not have as many expenses, but you still have to pay your mortgage. You still have to pay your food. You still have family members to take care of. So again, none of those things are ever talked about. And then on the non-financial side of things, for those of us that go through the whole process, I think about the mental toll. You know, I was 41 and I had a 4/5-year-old at my house to manage. I didn't have the ability to get, like, you know, some therapy or anything like that. You can't afford it. Again, who's going to pay for that? Insurance sure as hell doesn't. So, you know, you always have that situation too. So you're managing your house as well. There's always that feeling of the other shoe is going to drop. So I'm cancer free right now, but I have a daily reminder of a medication I need to take that reminds me every day that there's cancer right over my shoulder. Hi, I can come back. And I have to take that every day for the rest of my life. And I also think about, in these few years, I've known so many women that have had breast cancer come back. And when it comes back the second time, most times it's stage 4, it's aggressive, and you do not make it. There is no cure for stage 4 cancer or stage 4 breast cancer. And I don't think a lot of people are aware of that. Again, the whole pink ribbon, rah, 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 but they don't talk about stage 4. And I feel for these women. Stage 4 cancer, usually what happens is you're put on a regimen just to keep the cancer from spreading. They're constantly switching up their medications. Just sometimes stuff stops working, so they need to move on to the next regimen. That stops working. They need to move on to the next one, and so on and so forth. So they can live, somebody with stage 4 breast cancer, if they're lucky enough, they can live 5 to 10 years with it. But it is a death sentence, and it's a slow death sentence. And again, I'm sure, you try to make, they try to make the most of it, but it's something they live with until they die from breast cancer. And in these years, I had a friend from high school die from it. I've known a neighbor. I've known actually 2 neighbors. One of my son's, camp mates, I guess you can call it, sleepaway camp mates, his mom died from it. Somebody I know from a Jeep club, she died. So it's a lot more common than people realize, and I think they don't notice it until they've had breast cancer, and they realize, when you've had it, it's just like that whole thing about you don't see that many people with your car until you think about that car or whatever, that whole noticing it until you have it or you're affected by it. So it's a lot more common than people realize. And again, there is no cure for it. Just like there is no cure for most cancers out there. And for somebody like me, whose mom died of renal cancer, it looms. You think about it all the time on a regular basis. But you live your life. It's not like death is just standing over my shoulder all the time. But again, for many of us, Pinktober just brings that up. So it's like, great, another reminder. So another reason why a lot of us don't need that reminder on a regular basis, because it's there for us every day. But my biggest point with all of this is, so let's be all rah, rah, rah about get your boobies checked and, making those silly little jokes. But at the same time, we need to provide support for people that get cancer in general, not just breast cancer. But I find a lot of times that women's health care in this country is under attack. And we're poo-pooed and, we're kind of pushed to the side when it comes to our health care. I can't tell you guys how many times I brought up stuff to my doctors recently and right before I was diagnosed with breast cancer that it's just like, whatever, it's not a big deal kind of mentality. And it's hard for us to be our own advocates when we're poo-pooed. So just to you ladies out there, be your own advocates. Don't let your doctors push you around. If the one doctor is poo-pooing you, go find another one. I had to go through 3 different doctors to finally get an answer as to why I was so tired and why I was having these weird pains all over my body. I have a severe B12 deficiency. And it was probably caused by breast cancer and all the chemo and all that other nonsense, because it wears on your body. I'm not the same person I was before, not just age, but cancer wears on you. I look at myself from before the chemo to right after the chemo. I don't look like the same person anymore. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that point up. So just something to think about for a lot of folks that are keen on celebrating Pinktober and, the ribbons and the pink and all of that. So also consider who's making money from this. Where's the money going? I didn't see any of it. as a breast cancer survivor. I had to fight tooth and nail to pay those deductibles. I was fortunate that the company that made my Herceptin treatment actually had a voucher program. So my Herceptin treatment got taken care of for the most part. And to be blunt, I'll give you guys some numbers. I don't have them off the top of my head, but again, my surgery was about 50 grand. Each infusion treatment, but this is Erythromycin, Cytoxan, and whatever the T was, ACT. Those were about 5,000 something per treatment. I had to do them every other week. And then my Herceptin treatment, which was about once a month, was about $10,000 per treatment. So all told, my breast cancer medical bills, I didn't have to pay these out of pocket, but medical bills were probably about $500,000 over the past, years. And that's also reconstructive surgery, because I went over to a surgeon and you got a breast implant and all that other stuff, because I just am lazy and don't want to deal with like what they call it, the chicken tender or the chicken breast thing that people put in their bra. So again, between all that, we're probably talking about 500 grand. And I was fortunate that I had good health insurance, but we got to think about those people that don't. And all this Pinktober stuff, where does the money go? Oh, research, okay. But can we also help out the people that are struggling? So again, I won't support it. You won't see me wearing pink ribbons. You won't see me, I don't like pink anyway, but that's besides the point. You won't see me with the pink shirts on. I will tell you to get your boobies checked as early age 40, because my first mammogram was when I found it. Had I waited, who knows what would have happened. But those are my feelings on it. Again, I just wanted to wait till after the rah Pinktober stuff stopped, because we're towards the end of the month. I didn't want to rain in on anybody's parade. I know some people celebrated. They do all this stuff in schools and work and all that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to bring that up and let folks know the other side of the coin from somebody that's been there and survived it. And as I mentioned before, I'm not the only one. So it's not like I'm a bitter Scrooge here. There are many of us that feel the same way. So thanks for listening.